It's toast! Commish.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. Long time no see. Plate coverage, obviously. Commish, it's been a long time. How are you? How's everything going in your personal life? Not just baseball wise, but how's all those kids you coach? Are they well?
Everybody's well, man. We just got back. We were in Myrtle and we had.
Are you winning? Are you winning?
We did. We got knocked out in the quarterfinals of a national tournament. We were down south and we lost to the team that won the whole thing. So
that's always nice. It's a nice consolation.
It made me feel a little better. There was one team that was in the final four. They lost 2-0 to another powerhouse, and we had actually beaten that team in pool play. So I was like, maybe if we were on the other side of that bracket, maybe we would have made it to the final four. You never know. So it was fun. It's a good experience for the guys. So it's always fun going down south, playing some good competition. I love the umpires in the south too. They're no BS umpires. It's a lot different than playing up north. So I always like that experience, but it was good. It's been too long since we've done the show though. I've missed you.
Yeah, it's been fun. It's been up and down. I'm on a little bit of a heater right now, it feels like, but right before the All-Star break was a little bit rough, but nothing too crazy. But yeah, just doing the show every day, But yeah, I understand that you also have a personal life and stuff, and I totally get it. So I'm ready to talk. I'm ready to hear your thoughts. I mean, this is a really, really exciting time in Major League Baseball right now with all these trade rumors and stuff. And you and I kind of look at the game a little bit different ways, and I think that's a very good thing. So I'm just kind of curious to see where we stand on some of these things for as far as a couple certain teams, couple certain players, and whatnot. So I guess we can start off with the biggest news. I guess I think this is kind of the biggest news, and
it's our favorite team.
So yeah, so the Blue Jays making another genius decision. As far as we're concerned, not selling. Repeat, they are not going to be selling the farm, meaning any guy that they have multiple years of control left, they're going to keep. Guys that you might see for Toronto possibly leaving, maybe like a Justin Turner, Danny Jansen, guys like that. Maybe if you're interested in an Alek Manoah, you might be able to pry him away from them. I don't know, but you never know with the Blue Jays. They might want a first-round pick for that guy, as far as I'm concerned. So, Commish, what are your thoughts on the Toronto Blue Jays' latest decision?
I think this is an absolute joke. I don't know what the hell they're doing. We've been talking about this all season with the Blue Jays. We're like, hey, they're going to sell, right? They got Bichette, they got Vlad. And we've had conversations about, well, who's your core piece? Who's the guy that you don't trade and you try to rebuild around? You got to give somebody an extension, and then you got to build around that guy. I think the obvious answer is Vlad. But if you're going to build around Vlad and try to retool a roster that has had zero postseason success since these guys have all come up, then this is the perfect year to do it. You look at the standings right now. What are you holding on to? The Blue Jays are 9.5 games out of the wild card in the American League. There's no way they're making any noise in their division in the second half of the season. You go look at the American League East, Baltimore, New York, Boston, even Tampa. Like all four of those teams are certifiably better than Toronto is. And Toronto's got no upside. You have an aging Kevin Gausman. Chris Bassett has a skill set that is we all knew was going to struggle to age well. Kikuchi probably on his way out. He's one of the few guys we can pull up who they have some control over. Kikuchi, free agent after this year. Why would you hold on to him in a market where starting pitching is so scarce? So you have to imagine Kikuchi is going to be gone. I don't understand why you're not putting everybody on the table. Bichette should be on the table. You should have Springer on the table. Varsho, every single guy that you are not committed to for the next 4 or 5 years should be on the table. And you should be trying to retool around Vlad, who's still on the younger side. He's still only 25. There's times where we don't see prospects debut until 23, 24. Vlad is still very young. Vlad, you can still build a team around. Bo Bichette, you cannot.
Why are
these guys not on the table?
I was going to say, to answer your question, Vlad's the guy that's their cornerstone, or at least they believe that is their cornerstone. I was very lucky. I got
it. That's valid, right? Vlad, we know what Vlad can do at his peak. We know what Vlad can do at his peak. If you're running the Blue Jays and you have to pick one guy to build around, it has to be Vlad.
I agree. And I had the pleasure of running into Buck Martinez, who does color for them. He's been around baseball for a long time. I chatted with him for a few minutes in the Seattle airport, and he made it very clear to me, and he was dead serious. We were talking baseball about they were not going to trade Vlad. There wasn't a chance in hell. And he told me to my face that Bo had no value right now. Obviously, he's been hurt a lot this year. And he hasn't really, multiple times, and he hasn't really done anything. The first half of this year, 221 average, 4 home runs, 30 RBIs. a 0.2 WAR. It's just really, really bad. So he's owed $20 million through 2025. So I can understand if they got a decent deal or a team wanting to go after Bo. I like Bo. He's definitely had a really, really bad year, and the defense is terrible. It's something that I thought that would get better, and it has not. But I can see him. Maybe there's a little bit of him in Vladdy's shadow. Maybe it's something with him in the Blue Jays. I don't know, but I could definitely see him being a better player with a new team and a little bit of a fresh air, fresh start type of situation. But at the same time, until he gets healthy or he shows that he's back to the person that he is, it's going to really be hard for one to get anything for him. And then as far as Vlad goes, I don't even know what to think of Vlad. He's starting to play better this year. He's again, and if he has another solid year, maybe really I will let this go.
Ever since we talked shit about him,
exactly, he's
been really hot.
So that's why I was like, as soon as I started saying that, I was like, you better stop. Don't go too far. You're gonna get crushed. So again, he has been playing fantastic. I'm not there yet with Vlad. So again, 816 OPS in the first half, 14 homers, 55 RBI. Not terrible. And again, only 25, like Commish answered. So 2021, he was an MVP runner-up. My question or my issue is I don't know if he'll ever be that good ever again. That's just my personal feeling. Some people think I'm crazy. We'll see. But there's a lot of trouble, to say the least, in Toronto.
Well, and I think the last point I'll make on this is because, like you said, you had the conversation at the airport. Okay, Bo Bichette, no value, is what it is. But you look at teams that are still semi in contention or firmly in contention. The Atlanta Braves, 29th this year in WRC plus from the shortstop position. Cleveland 28th. Those are two teams right there. Cleveland would not have to give up anything substantial to get Bo Bichette, I would think. Like, if you're the Toronto Blue Jays, you should not be holding Bo Bichette ransom for some huge price tag. Cleveland, you think, has to be a logical fit. That's a team that, if you bring Bo Bichette in, you're not regressing from what you have. It's rat piss that you have at shortstop right now. You bring Bichette in, like you said, a new environment. You get a new clubhouse, some good energy. Maybe you see a little bit of a resurgence from Bo Bichette. The glove has always been abysmal, right? So you're not betting on that. But Cleveland could benefit from a little bit of offense from that position. Atlanta, the same way. They let Dansby Swanson go in free agency because they thought they had Vaughn Grisham waiting in the wings, and now Vaughn Grisham isn't even with the team. Orlando Arcia was a nice story for a year, but they need a more permanent solution at the shortstop position. Atlanta's a team that could use some new life, a bigger name coming in the clubhouse. I'm surprised that we haven't heard Bo Bichette to Atlanta talks. I just don't know why. But why is Bo Bichette not more firmly in trade talks? I don't know. I get that the value's low. I get it. I'm not giving you much for Bo Bichette. Nobody should be. But there's teams that, like Cleveland has a 70 WRC plus, Atlanta 58 WRC plus from the shortstop position. Go do something. These teams, they barely have a pulse at shortstop right now. Bo Bichette at least gives you some hope, some optimism.
Yeah, again, it's really hard to get a read on that Toronto team, to say the least.
They're just poorly run, man. If you look at who that you bring in, Justin Turner, 39 years old, one of the oldest players in Major League Baseball in recent years. You knew that wasn't going well. You have Kevin Kiermaier retiring after this season. Kikuchi's a 2025 free agent. Yimi Garcia is a 2025 free agent. Danny Jansen, Trevor Richards. Those are some substantial pieces to a team that's already 10 games under 500. What do you hope? What if you if you ask yourself this as a Toronto fan or as a member of the front office, if you run it back with this group minus Turner, Kiermaier, Kikuchi, Garcia, Jansen, Richards, and maybe you keep one or two of those guys, right? But let's just assume a lot of those guys are gone, especially the older guys who are probably going to retire. What are you hoping to do next year in a division that has the Yankees, the Orioles, the Red Sox? Even if you think the Rays aren't going to be that good, right? There's 3 teams in that division that are clearly ahead of you developmentally right now. A lot of winning is timing, and especially in a crowded division. If you're the Blue Jays, if I'm the Blue Jays, I'm sitting there and I'm like, this is not our time. Why not blow this up? See what we can get for George Springer, who's under contract through 2027 on a bad deal. Gausman through 2027, aging, had some injury issues. Even the Dalton Varshalls, I know you gave up a fair amount to go get him. The Jose Barrios, like, get rid of some of these guys, especially with how many teams are out there that need starting pitching right now. Jose Barrios has been horrific, but I guarantee you somebody would trade for Jose Barrios, especially at a semi-reasonable price. You have team control through 2029. They're doing themselves and they're doing their fan base a complete disservice if they don't move off of a lot of these bigger pieces.
Yeah, they just, like I said, yeah, we'll get off of them, but they just must be convinced. And I don't know if you might be able to get somebody to trade for Barrios, but I mean, that's $18 million for the next through 27, 28.
29. Well, yeah, so he's a 29 free agent, so through 28.
Yeah, that's
25,
a lot for a guy that
4 years.
I mean, that's where they should have traded him when he was looking fantastic 2 months ago. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like one of those situations. Like, anyway, let's talk about another team that wears blue on the West Coast at times. Well, teal blue, that just can't hit a baseball. In the Seattle Mariners that have, I mean, I guess the same amount of questions, just differently asked ones. Obviously, we know that Seattle can do what? Pitch. But they couldn't hit to save their life. I mean, I'm dead serious. If Commish and I were batting 8-9 in this lineup, I don't think it would. I honestly don't know if it would be that much different if you looked at their full season numbers. If me and you got 4 at bat tonight, even if we're striking out 19 out of 20 times, if we get a blue base hit, it's honestly the same goddamn thing. So, obviously, Seattle needs a bat. Have you put in any thought into what we might see from Seattle? I know I have a few guys in my head, but I'm curious to see what your thoughts are on Seattle, this whole situation. Obviously, now I don't even know what Seattle does with JP Crawford going down. Julio Rodriguez is not right now. I mean, just really quickly, I want to go just so you guys know how bad this lineup is looking right now. We already know that they're terrible and their numbers are terrible, one of the worst in the league, but here's their lineup really quickly. Josh Rojas, Victor Robles, who couldn't stay in Washington, Cal Raleigh, Jorge Polanco, Mitch Haniger, Jason Vossler, Tyler Locklear, Luke Raley, and Dylan Moore. Just really, really, really hard to get around with these guys. Obviously, the pitching staff's fantastic, but what would you like to see Seattle do, or who would you like to see in a Seattle uniform this coming trade deadline?
I think it's really tough because if you look at where Seattle's at, they had I'm not going to say a massive lead. I don't think there's any such thing as a massive lead in a division in Major League Baseball early in the season, but they had a big enough lead that it's definitely startling at a minimum to see them trailing the Houston Astros, who had no Justin Verlander. They had issues with Framber Valdez. Hunter Brown wasn't right at the start of the season. Lance McCullers hasn't been there in forever. Luis Garcia's on the IL. Houston had no pitching to start the year. And now you have Seattle still. And Houston has not had Kyle Tucker for the last month and change. And now Seattle's sitting here finding themselves one game behind the Houston Astros and only barely had the Texas Rangers, who have Malley, DeGrom, and some other potential pieces coming back the second half of the year, with Evan Carter looking like he's getting healthy, Josh Young taking some swings now. If I'm Seattle, I think you need to take a long, hard look and say, is this our year? Because like you mentioned, it's been bad. And now JP Crawford, a huge piece up the middle, didn't work out. Ty France was a guy who the last couple of years, not a superstar by any stretch of the imagination, but someone who you could count on for at least some production and some stability at first base at a corner spot.
I mean, he had one good season and then kind of fell off, but yeah.
He had one peak season, but he's been someone that you could plug in the 7 hole and feel relatively comfortable about a guy like that in the 7 hole. There's some veteran stability there. Julio Rodriguez has gone from an MVP candidate to to what the guy's been unplayable for. I mean, he looks like he hasn't been in the batting cages in months, which is probably a little bit too disrespectful, but he's had a handful of good games. He's been really, really bad. Seattle's got the pitching though. Like, I think that's the thing. If I'm Seattle, how do you not buy? Because if you get into a playoff series, especially these early rounds,
That's
5-game format, 3 and 5 game format, if you're sending out Kirby, Gilbert, Castillo in whatever order you so please, and then
you said it right. That would be the 1, 2, 3.
That would be mine. But there's people that who like Luis Castillo more than us. We have to admit that. There's people out there. Who like Luis Castillo. I'm sure somebody in the comments is going to yell at us for talking shit about Luis Castillo. But Seattle, you have those 3 guys in a playoff series. Let's say you get Cleveland in the first round. If you're Seattle, I don't give a shit what my regular season record is. If I get into a playoff series and I get to play a team like Cleveland in the first round,
they would win that series.
I think without a doubt, because you're facing a Cleveland team that's got the same offensive struggles. But Cleveland,
worse pitching,
right? Who is Cleveland handing the ball to in game 1? Is it
Cookie, the Cookie Monster?
Is it Carlos Carrasco? Maybe Gavin Williams? Tanner Bibby's hurt again.
He'll be back. It'll be Bibby.
You would think, right? But I think the larger point is that rotation is that they don't hold a candle to Seattle. And the offense, as bad as Seattle's offense has been, Seattle gets through that series. They find themselves in a 5-game series. They can go toe-to-toe with anybody in the American League on a pitching front, assuming Baltimore doesn't come away with a Tariq Skubal or somebody like that at the deadline. But if I'm Seattle, I have to do everything I can to get into the postseason. I don't know why you wouldn't go after someone like Luis Robert, Randy Arozarena, Brent Rooker. Like, you need somebody who can infuse some life into this offense. They lost to the Angels, 3-1 and 2-1 back-to-back days. You can't have that. Those have to be wins on your schedule. And those are games in the postseason when you're getting 6 or 7 innings of 1-run ball from a starter. You have to be able to go get those wins. Like, if you look back, we're doing this podcast on the 25th. They lost 2-1 to the Angels, 5-1 to the Angels, 3-1 to the Angels. They beat Houston on Sunday. They lost 4-2 to Houston and 3-0 to Houston. So they've scored 0, 1, or 2 runs in 5 of their first 6 games coming out of the All-Star break. Now you get 3 against the White Sox. You got to beat the White Sox, right, going into the trade deadline. I don't know. They have to go get one of these impact bats. Every guy on this list of potential people who could be traded, Isaac Paredes, Luis Robert, Arozarena, Jazz Chisholm, Brent Rooker, all of these guys have flaws, 100%. But if you're Seattle, you have no choice but to hope Brent Rooker comes and just mashes for a second half of a season. You have no choice but to see, hey, like, can we pair Luis Robert with Julio Rodriguez and just see what that looks like? And Robert's got at an affordable price tag for a number of years. And if you go look at the comments that have been made by the Seattle front office, they've talked about, we're not all in any singular season. We want to put ourselves in a position where we're winning 57% of our games over a decade. And if we do that, we're going to give ourselves a chance consistently to compete for a championship. I think Luis Robert makes a ton of sense for this organization. You go put him in a corner outfield spot. You bring an impact bat who can run the bases a little bit. We'll see what they want to do. I'm a little worried if they just go get a Band-Aid bat like a Brent Rooker or somebody like that. It's not going to do enough to move the needle. And I think they're flirting with not being in the postseason at all. We could pull up the wild card standings. They're 3.5 out right now. And to be completely blunt, Boston is in a better spot than them health-wise, I think talent-wise. And that's a clubhouse that really believes in itself. They just re-signed or extended Alex Cora. So they're invested in what they're doing. That's not a team that's going to be looking to sell. The Royals might regress, but I think the Twins and the Yankees definitely better than the Mariners. So I think they're in a tough spot, and they have some guys on their heels. I think Texas and Detroit are 2 teams that, if Detroit decides to hang on to Flaherty and Skubal, I don't think we should be ready to count them out just yet. What do you think?
Definitely couldn't. Detroit is a weird one. I think that Seattle, I 100% agree with everything that you said. I would love for Seattle to, that's the thing, is that I feel like Seattle's going to nibble around the edges. Lane Thomas was on my list as well. You can go get a guy like Lane Thomas. Maybe you go get a guy like Tommy Pham as well. That's two upgrades in your lineup. That's not going to cost you a whole bunch. And then And then if you can do that, that's two solid veteran bats in your lineup. That's obviously going to give you an upgrade. And then if you're really trying to go for it, make a package for Isaac Paredes or Randy Arozarena or somebody like that, or Brandon Lau, that you can probably take away or steal away from Tampa Bay if you really, really wanted him as well. Paredes making the All-Star team now. He's under control till 2027. I get that, but again, the Seattle Mariners are desperate right now, and he's another. I mean, if they were to go get Randy Arozarena, I mean, how electric would Randy Arozarena and Julio Rodriguez be in the same outfield? I mean, not to mention Randy Arozarena has October experience, and you can trust him. He's heating up right now, even though he just took one off the dome the other night. That was crazy. Earlier today, excuse me.
And that's an affordable price tag too. For a team like Seattle, who's sort of mid-tier in terms of spending, they can go take his $8 million this year. You figure arbitration probably go up a little bit the next couple of years. But Tampa Bay, if Tampa Bay's not competing for a championship, they want to move off of a contract like that for sure.
Another thing that another possible scenario, like I was kind of dinking around in my head, Miami is trading a lot of guys, right? Why don't they maybe go out and get Jazz and Jake Berger, which I understand Jake Berger's not a huge name, but he has been heating up lately. You don't really get a whole bunch of third basemen on the market. If you can get him and Jazz, a guy that can play the infield, he can play the outfield. Jazz made 2 fantastic catches today. Was it today? I can't remember. Today or yesterday, 2 fantastic catches, both to either side of him. So again, those would be 2 more bats and a guy like Jazz that can steal you bags as well. That again, I'm just trying to find ways, because if you make that mega deal with its 2 guys, whether it be with Tampa Bay or Miami or whomever, I mean, that could really put you in a place where, I mean, I feel like Seattle just has to get there. If they can get to the dance, then they're going to put themselves in a situation where they're going to be all right. And, and maybe Seattle Seattle has a lot to offer. And if they choose, they could really, really go get a lot of guys, because not only does Seattle have major league ready talent, they also have guys like like Jonathan Clase and stuff that are like fantastic prospects that any team in Major League Baseball would want. So there's so many questions about Seattle, but I think that this whole American League West is extremely, extremely intriguing to me. Just because, like you touched on Texas as well. I mean, the amount of possibilities that I could see with that team. I mean, they just won 4 games against Chicago, against the White Sox, and that's huge for them, especially coming out of the break. But I also asked myself, does ownership and the front office put a whole bunch of stock into that? I understand they're 2.5 out now and whatnot. But do they sell? I mean, because they have a lot of pieces where I could see a scenario, and obviously the next week or so is going to depend a lot on how these teams approach this. But I could see a scenario with Texas getting rid of a couple guys as well. Nate Eovaldi, they could probably get a decent amount for. So there's a lot of questions to be asked around this whole thing. I mean, obviously with Houston as well, needing a first baseman and whatnot. So I can't wait to a little bit just to kind of sit back and watch too, because that's going to be really, really fun.
Yeah, it should be an exciting deadline. I think the Jake Berger comment you made is really fascinating. If you look at Seattle, 26th in WRC plus at second base this year, 25th at third base. If you could go get
Rojas is terrible. Absolutely terrible.
Yeah, and so if you can go get a couple of guys, again, these are not guys who are going to by themselves move the needle from fringe playoff contender to championship contender, but collectively, if they get hot at the right time,
not even just their average, they're huge upgrades offensively. Like just if you just So
I think at a minimum they're modest upgrade. And I think people don't understand enough that in baseball, modest upgrades are very significant, because it's not like basketball where a team will have LeBron James and Anthony Davis, or they'll have Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray. And in baseball, 2 stars don't win. You need depth, and you need a lot of really talented baseball players 1 through 25 on a roster. You need bullpen arms. You need starting pitching. You need guys who run the bases well. You need guys who understand their role. And I know I'm oversimplifying this. Like, before we get any people from the NBA in here shitting on me, I understand the Contavious Caldwell-Popes of the world are important. You need the 3-and-D guys for sure. But in baseball, you need not just one Contavious Caldwell-Pope, not just one Derek White. You need 5 of them. You need a 5 through 9 in the order that's going to be able to produce and give you some quality at bats. So I think that would be a great trade for Seattle if they were able to go. And I'm not even big on Jazz Chisholm, but if you go get Jazz and Jake Berger, I think that elevates the floor of your offense significantly. And then, like you said, the pitching's there. You have 3 guys who have at one point or another in the last 3 years been Cy Young contenders with Kirby, Castillo, and Gilbert. You got to do something. You have to get to the dance, like you said.
I'm going to run through this really quickly, but just to put this in perspective for Seattle offensively and pitching wise, offensively, 30th in batting average, 28th in slug, 28th in OPS, 30th in strikeouts, 30th in doubles, 27th in RBIs. Flip it over to the pitching side. First in ERA, first in WHIP, first in batting average against, third in FIP, 8th in strikeouts, 4th in Sierra, 3rd in K to BB ratio. Dominant pitching staff. If they can just find something with the bats and make it into the dance somehow, some way, they're going to be all right.
I completely agree with you.
Maybe.
I want to get you one more team. I want to get your thoughts on. I want to get your thoughts on Cleveland. So we're talking right now. The Guardians, believe this or not. I'm actually going to pull this up just so we have some photo verification of this. Cleveland right now has the best record in the American League. They're tied with the Baltimore Orioles, best record in the American League. I want to get your thoughts. Cleveland, I think, my opinion, significantly overperformed in the first half of the season. 42 of their first 63 games this year were against teams that finished 2023 below 500. Not a perfect science, right? But I think it's fair to characterize the first half of their schedule as relatively easy. Now, the back half of their schedule, much more difficult. And like we talked about, the pitching, let's be real. Ben Lively is not going to last a whole season in a rotation, right? Carlos Carrasco, he's been somewhat serviceable. Not a guy that you really want making 20, 25 starts for you over the course of a season. Bobby hurt again. Gavin Williams coming off an injury. Tristan McKenzie pitching through a torn UCL has been a failed experiment. I think it's fair to conclude that at this point. You have the best record in baseball. You have Jose Ramirez, who's on the wrong side of 30 years old, having another MVP-like season. But other than the Jose Ramirez piece in this puzzle, which is a big one, obviously, but other than the Jose Ramirez piece in this puzzle, there's not a whole lot of reason for Cleveland to go all gas, no break here this season. They don't have the pitching to compete in the postseason. They're not a team that hits a lot of home runs. They're very weak up the middle. Their second base short combination, Jimenez is phenomenal defensively at second, but they don't get a ton of production offensively up the middle. Catcher's been a little bit of a weak spot for them. The bullpen is there. Like, I think that's the one piece that you have Jose Ramirez at third base, and then you have the 7, 8, 9 in the bullpen, where if you want to abuse those guys for one postseason, maybe. What would you do if you're Cleveland? Do you go and do you try to get some of these like Garrett Crochet type guys, or do you just let it ride with these young pieces and just see what happens and then chalk up a first-round playoff loss to experience, and then we'll be back next year?
Dude, Cleveland is the most – I don't even understand what to do with Cleveland. I mean, okay, obviously you have Chase DeLauter, Manzardo, who's the other kid?
Who struggled? Manzardo's struggled.
I know, but still, he's up there. He's one of the he's a good prospect.
But I think he's another guy where I think you're actually making a stronger argument to let's see what he can do for a whole second half of the season instead of trying to go fill that spot with a mediocre veteran, like a Josh Bell archetype. Like, why would you do that and take away at bats from Kyle?
100% agree. Here's my thing with Cleveland. So I'm like, okay, like let's just like pretend that they're gonna go out and maybe you can see that if you want to think that they're gonna go out and buy or trade. Like, you start looking at how they've allocated their money. Like, obviously they paid Jose Ramirez. Okay, cool. They paid Andres Jimenez. Okay, yep, that makes sense. Bieber, that makes sense. The 4th highest paid player on this roster, Scott Barlow. Then Naylor and Clase. Okay, yep, that makes sense. First baseman, That's your reliever. And then you got guys like Austin Hedges, James Karinchak, Carlos Carrasco, Sam Hedges, Nick Sandlin. I mean, these are the guys that are making money in Cleveland. It's not the guys that are doing everything. Everything that your guys that you're getting production out of, the David Frys, the Bibees, the Liveleys, Cade Smith, who's been an absolute revelation for this team. None of these guys are making money because they're all younger guys. Like, for me, it's Cleveland is like one of the most frustrating teams that you can come across, because if they just wanted to spend a little bit of money and do something, I mean, this team could be really, really good. I think that it's pointless for Cleveland to make any moves as far as buying this year because of the starting pitching. I mean, right now, as we speak today, because obviously Bibee's hurt, so you only have 4 guys in your rotation until you bring somebody up, and it's Gavin Williams, Ben Lively, Carlos Carrasco, and Xavier Curry. Bieber's hurt. Tristan McKenzie, even if he were to come up, you couldn't trust him, and he's hurt himself anyway, whether you want to admit it or not. I mean, James Karinchak hasn't done anything. Stefan, who they're paying, is hurt as well. I mean, it's just I don't understand any point. I mean, Cleveland's just got to hope that they can hold on, and I mean, they're going to lose in the first round again. I mean, I'm sorry to say that, Cleveland fans, but like, that's the only thing that I can see with this team. So it was a cool start to the season. We made a lot of money, but now we're on the flip side of that, and we're making a lot of money fading them. So maybe, I mean, honestly, if I'm Cleveland, I try to trade a guy. I mean, they wouldn't because of the control and stuff, but I would try to trade a guy like David Fry and see what you can get out of him. Coming off of an all-star season. I mean, he's got 2 more years of control or whatever. So I'm curious to see what that kind of deal with that would be. But yeah, I don't know what to think of Cleveland.
I'm with you. And I don't know if Cleveland knows what to think of Cleveland, because if you listen to all the comments coming from the front office during the spring training, early part of the season, they were very adamant that they were not going to upgrade the roster at any point this season. If they started off well, if they started off bad, this was a year where they wanted young players to get 400 or 500 at bats, plate appearances, and just see what happens. First year manager, I think expectations were very, I don't want to say low, maybe tempered in Cleveland. You're on mute. Go ahead. You're on mute.
That Matt Wilkinson kid, have you heard of him?
No.
He's like he's like one of their pitchers in single A. He's got like a 1.9 ERA. I just didn't know, because I guess I've heard his name come up a little bit as being really, really good as well. But yeah, I was just kind of curious.
Yeah, but I think that's where Cleveland is at. They just had the top overall pick in the draft. Do you rush someone like that to the big leagues? I think it's a lot tougher to do that with the bat than it is to do with someone like Paul Skeens. Do you try to rush DeLauder, or do you try to rush some of these young guys up and try to fill some holes, whether it's on the pitching staff or in the lineup, and then potentially jeopardize their long-term development if they come up and they're not ready, they're very overwhelmed? I think they're in a weird spot because Jose Ramirez is on the wrong side of 30. You definitely want to maximize every year that you have him on the roster, because Cleveland's not going to have a superstar like that at an affordable price probably ever again. So you want to try to win with him. You have a bullpen that you continue to abuse. I don't know how many more innings Emmanuel Clase has before the wheels fall off the bus there. He has been the most used reliever now 3 years in a row. They're abusing the other guys at the back end of that bullpen. If you're Cleveland, you have to try to win, but at what cost? Because you also have these guys under team control. There's absolutely no reason that you can't run this back again next year, and then actually maybe have guys like Chase DeLauder, maybe actually have the top overall pick in the draft, and have some of those things in your favor. I just don't know, to your point, if Cleveland even gets into the postseason, how are a team like Seattle? Seattle's one of the most flawed teams that might make it into October. And I think if you're Cleveland against Seattle in the first round, I think the bet is very clearly, let's take Seattle, come out of this, whether it's 3 games, 5 games, or 7 games. I don't know how Cleveland gets through a series like that. I just don't.
They don't. That's just the easy answer.
But I think what's going to happen is you're going to see them probably go after some nibbles, like you said with Seattle. I think Cleveland's going to nibble a little bit. They might go get, I don't know, maybe like a Tanner Scott, or they might go get a, like a Brent Rooker-esque, or Eric Fetty's a cheaper contract from that they could maybe swallow, has 1 more year of team control. Like I could see them doing something like that, or maybe Jameson Tyone, another guy who's a couple of years, could eat some innings. I just don't see Cleveland doing anything that's going to put them in a position where it's this year or bust. I think anybody that they're going to trade for, they at minimum have to have 25 and probably 2026 team control.
Yeah, I don't even know what to think about this team, dude.
I think Minnesota's winning this division. I think if there's one bet that I would make right now on a team that's not currently in first place that I think wins the division, I think it's the Minnesota Twins.
Yeah, I
1.5 games back right now.
I wouldn't argue that at all. So yeah, they're another team that's kind of interesting to kind of see what they end up doing. So does Pablo Lopez figure it out? I mean, we'll see. So they got Detroit and the Mets coming up, which will be really fun to watch their next 2 series. So if they play well against them, then they get the White Sox and the Cubs back to back. And the reason that I mentioned that, because that's where after that, you're going to have a day off. And then you have 6 games against Cleveland and Kansas City, the 9th through the 14th of August. So by the 15th of August, we might have a very good indication of where this division is going to be. So this will be
teams at home too. They get,
yeah. So it's going to be very, very fun. Yeah. All those, I should have said that. Yeah. So
that's a great point. If they can parlay a nice winning streak here, like let's say they take 2 out of 3 from Detroit, 2 out of 3 from the Mets, Chicago, you at home, you got to take 2 out of 3. Even if they lose this series to the Cubs,
dude,
it's
hard to
consistently.
They're not losing.
Yeah, but even if you give, and maybe not the Cubs series, but maybe it's the Mets series. Let's give away one of these series.
I would make more sense.
But let's say, so if you win 2 out of 3, let's say you're 3-3, 5-4, 7-5 in these next 12 games. I don't see Cleveland or Kansas City being much better than that in that stretch. So they're probably still within 4 or 5 games of first place. You get 4 in a row at home against Cleveland, 3 in a row against the Royals at home. And Kansas City, we know, has been a completely different team on the road than they have been at home.
Mm-hmm.
It's very possible on August 15th that the Minnesota Twins are in first place.
Yeah, I 100% agree. The only thing that sucks for them is they're going to get Scooble this weekend, and Detroit is red hot. So that's going to be that series is going to be extremely important and really fun to watch as well. So
yeah, so maybe they go 6-6. Maybe if they go 6-6 over the next 12 games, Cleveland right now 4-6 in their last 10. The Royals are 6-4 in their last 10. So even if they lost a game to Cleveland and a game to Kansas City, the Twins would still be tied with the Royals going into that series, and they would be 5.5 behind Cleveland, 5 back in the loss column. If Minnesota takes 3 out of 4 from Cleveland, they gain 2 games. You're right back in the division at that point. I gotta find the odds on this right now. I'm very intrigued at what we have for some futures numbers.
Dude, I have the Twins to win the American League.
I also do. I'm really.
I mean, I bet it a long time ago, but yeah.
No, the Twins are my team. Like someone asked me preseason who's making the World Series, and the Twins. I think they have the bullpen for it. I think they have the starting pitching for it. I'm looking the American League Central. Yeah, the Twins are plus 255 on DraftKings right now. I don't think that price is going to last.
Probably not.
I think at a minimum, you're going to see Cleveland and Minnesota in a dogfight in September to win this division.
That makes sense.
Well, so we've talked about some teams that might be interesting to watch. Tariq Skubal, probably the biggest fish that might move. If he does move, where do you see him going?
If we're saying where I think that he could probably go, I think it would be LA, because I think I personally, Ryan Sams, feel like the only way you're going to get, there's 2 ways you could get Tariq Skubal.
Can we do quick sidebar? I did not know your name was Ryan.
Really?
So this is this is one of the most interesting things. This is like a very quick sidebar, I promise. You do work with people in this space, and Toast lives in Alaska. I have not had the pleasure of meeting him in person yet, but you do work with people, and people are like, oh, who you do a podcast with? Oh, this guy named Toast. Like, well, what's his real name?
Well, to be honest with you, I mean, none of my friends call me Toes. None of my friends call me Ryan. I haven't been Ryan since for a long, long time. So
you're Toast in real life too.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Okay.
I've had that nickname since I was a kid.
That makes me feel a little better. But I'm sure you're the same way. You have people on your show who like
100%.
they come on one time and it's like, I only know you as your Twitter alias, or I only know you as your username or whatever your service is. Crispy, well, like Crispy Cat, his name's Chris. But like there's guys who come on, like I'm Prop Bomb or Prop God or whatever your name is, and I don't know. It's like it's never at the top of the priority list to find out. Like,
no, I get it. I totally get what you're saying.
This was a big moment for me. This was a big moment for me.
But anyway, I think there's two situations where Scooble can go. One is if somebody just offers a crazy big package of prospects and MLB ready guys that Detroit just can't say no to. Another way that I think a team like, say, the Dodgers could take Scooble off of their hands with a decent package is taking a guy like Javi Baez as well. Because then if you're Detroit, I feel like you could sell that to your fan base by saying, yes, we gave up Tariq Skubal, and you probably end up getting rid of Jack Flaherty as well if you ended up making that deal. And I understand those two were very good pitchers, but then the haul that you would get and the money that you'd be able to get to go spend as well, I think the upside of that would be extremely intriguing if you're a Detroit fan personally. So again, Skubal only owed $900,000 in 2024. He's arbitration eligible through 2026. I mean, the dude's been an absolute stud so far. So I hope it's Baltimore personally. I hope that Baltimore comes out and makes a deal with him. I think that Baltimore is one of the more intriguing teams at this deadline as well, because Baltimore has the team. Baltimore can make two moves. Like, I could swear to God, if Baltimore made a move for Tariq Skubal and you got rid of, and regardless of who it was with, I think it's Skubal and Tanner Scott who they identify and they need to go get. Because Tanner Scott, the closer for the Marlins, has been a fantastic this year. Absolute filthy stuff. You would really want him because they have issues in that back end. We saw Kimbrel today blow another one. Cano, obviously, like I've said, he does not want to save. He can't save games. They need somebody like Tanner Scott in the back end, or Baltimore is going to have a lot of issues. And Baltimore's so rich in the prospect department that you can literally sit there and be like, okay, cool. You can have either Jackson Holiday, since Baltimore's on a team that I would expect to take Javi Baez, but you could have Jackson Holiday and then your choice of Heston Kjerstad and the other guys that are up on the roster, get one of those two guys. You could also throw in Mountcastle and Mullins because those are two guys with expiring contracts that you could get there. I don't think that they get rid of Mullins because of just who he has been for that team, but I definitely could see them getting rid of Ryan Mountcastle as well. Kjerstad, if he didn't go in that deal, could play first base. So there's a lot of moving parts in there. But if I had it my way, the new ownership group and Mike Elias in Baltimore would go for it, and they would pick up Skubal at another arm like Tanner Scott. And if you have Skubal, Corbin Burns, and Grayson Rodriguez in October 1, 2, 3, you should be all right, because even if Baltimore gave away a couple guys that are on the team right now, I still think that the guys that they could bring up prospect wise are guys that they have on the bench. I don't think that offense would be missing a whole bunch. So, and then again, with the pitching that they would have behind it, I mean, they'd have to be the overwhelming World Series favorite. Woo!
I like it, Toast. That was passionate.
I thought about it a lot. I thought about this a lot.
I think the Javi Baez comment that you made is really interesting because you look at his contract. So we're in this 2024 season right now. $25 million owed, and we'll just round up 2026 and 2027. $25 million owed each of the next 3 seasons. And then obviously he's a free agent. Whoever has him at that point is letting him go. I wonder, a team like Baltimore, they don't have a massive payroll. Like you mentioned, the new ownership group. Obviously, Javi Baez is not worth $25 million. This was a colossal mistake by the Tigers. They would love to get off of this deal if at all possible. Baltimore, even if you're the Dodgers, obviously Javi Baez is not worth this money. but is Tariq Skubal worth this money? And Tariq Skubal, to your point, is making no money. And this is kind of back to this different audience, but the LeBron James argument of like, oh, like you gave Bronny's kid $4 million. Well, did you give Bronny's kid $4 million? Did you, or in your mind, can you bucket that of like, we just gave LeBron $4 million more dollars and now we keep our superstar happy? I think that's an interesting conversation to be had.
And the only reason, really quickly, the only reason I said that about LA is because they're known to eat a little bit of money. And on top of that, Mookie hasn't been fantastic at shortstop. I know you don't want to hear that, but defensively,
I didn't say that. I just want to make that
he hasn't been the same. And from what they're looking at right now, I mean, the Dodgers need a lot of help in different places. I truly believe that the Dodgers could stick Javi out there, use him because he is fantastic defensively. No one's going to argue that about Javi. But you could put him out there. Dodgers could use him defensively and then pinch hit for him later in the game, take his 2 at-bats. I mean, I just feel like there's a way that he could actually get on the field in LA because he couldn't be anything worse. I mean, he's not that much worse than Miguel Rojas. I mean, come on. I mean, he's worse, but I mean, defensively, that's another upgrade. So again, there's just, I think there's lots of different ways to approach this for multiple teams.
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting conversation. Tariq Skubal making almost no money if you're a team like the Dodgers and who needs a shortstop. And it's not Javi Baez. Option A is never Javi Baez. But could you bring in a veteran presence who's been on teams that have won, by the way, 2016 Cubs. He was with the Mets the year that the Cubs traded him. He's been a part of some good clubhouses. I think there's some value in that. And if you're the Dodgers, you're uber invested. Like you have to try to win. Betts is going to be back healthy at some point.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see. Freddie Freeman is already healthy. Shohei Ohtani, you're trying to win every year that you're there with him. Let's say you get Yamamoto back. That's not a bad rotation to go into the postseason with, even with all the injuries. If you have Glass now healthy, you have Tariq Skubal healthy 1-2. Clayton Kershaw only really having to pitch half of his season. Let's see what that looks like. Is Clayton Kershaw someone that you could potentially rely on? And maybe Kershaw is someone who pitches out of the bullpen in the postseason. We've never seen that before. Maybe we protect him from seeing a lineup multiple times. We protect him from having to bounce back every 4 days. We know that's been an issue for him at that time of the year. I think if you're trying to resurrect your season and give yourself a legitimate chance at winning a championship, if you're the Dodgers, I think you have to pull the trigger on something like this. Baltimore, I think, is more unlikely because, one, I think if you're Detroit, you have to get Jackson Holliday in that deal. I don't think Baltimore is giving you Jackson Holliday for Tariq Skubal. There's no chance you're getting Jackson Holliday if you're also asking me to eat money on Javi Baez.
Yeah, correct.
So I think that makes it a little bit more unlikely for Baltimore.
I don't think that Jackson Holliday is untouchable because they have.
I don't think he's untouchable, but I think if you're trying
to, so it's not like they're going to sit there and be like, well,
no, I agree, but I think if you're trying to offload Javi's contract in the same conversation, there's no way you're getting Jackson Holliday back for that.
No,
but that would be interesting to see if you trade Jackson Holliday for Tariq Skubal straight up or close to straight up. That would be an interesting conversation because it benefits Baltimore a lot, and they still have infield depth. They have the Westbergs and the Ortiz and all these guys. It's not a huge loss. I mean, I shouldn't say that. Someone's going to crucify me for that. They're going to clip that 5 years from now when Jackson Holliday's an MVP candidate and he's starting the All-Star game. I think Tariq Skubal is a tremendous addition to your team, and you don't have the type of marquee pitching coming up through your pipeline. The way, like, you don't have a Tariq Skubal ready to graduate the way you just had Grayson Rodriguez come up, the way you have Corbin Burns there. If you go into a postseason, like you said, with Skubal, Corbin Burns, Grayson Rodriguez, you're competing with anyone, and you can bang because you have the Gunnar Hendersons and some guys who can swing it. I'm with you. I think Dodgers or Baltimore, but I think Dodgers is a more likely landing spot, and I still think Detroit holds on to him. I think it's really, really tough to justify giving away a guy like Tariq Skubal, especially with how well he's pitched.
And just really quick, the only other right-handed pitching that Detroit has in the top 100 as far as prospects is Jackson Jobe. But another thing too is that if they were, selling it to your fan base, if they were to get Javi Baez off the books, and then next year Mark Canha off the books, that's like $36 million right there. just those two guys that aren't worth shit anyway. That's a lot of money. Kenta Maeda is another one of those guys that's going to come off the books. Jack Flaherty's probably going to come off. You know what I'm saying? Like all these guys that are major guys that they've been paying are all going to come off the books. I mean, Detroit's going to have money to spend with a whole bunch of young players. Spencer Torkelson's down there as well. So if he ever finds something, I mean, Max Clark, I mean, there's a lot of reasons to be excited if you are a Detroit fan. Jace Young. So
it would make a lot of sense. It'll be interesting to see what they do. I think Detroit ultimately gets gun shy and they hold on to him, especially if they're within shouting distance of a wild card. I think they probably hold on to him.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. What about what are, I guess I can ask you just really quickly. What are your thoughts on Jameson Taillon in general? Is he somebody that you like backing, you trust, or is he somebody that you just stay far away because he's been pitching pretty good lately?
No, I'm not a Jameson Taillon guy, but this is where I think this is where I have to put on my if I'm a front office guy, I think I really like Jameson Taillon. Because if you look at Taillon, and this is to your point, his last 8 starts, 2.47 ERA, 3.46 FIP, pounding the zone, good command guy. Doesn't have elite swing and miss stuff. He's definitely benefited. He's a relatively low BABIP in here. Left on base percentage is quite high. So there's been some good luck here. He's still giving up quite a bit of hard contact. I think long term, this is a very, very mediocre pitcher. But so like this is where as a fan and as someone who has a podcast, I'm not excited about Jameson Taillon. But if I'm a front office guy and I'm standing here and I'm like, God damn, like I'm starting Logan Allen every 5 days. Would I rather start Logan Allen or would I rather start Jameson Taillon?
You're a hater.
A little bit. But but really, Jameson Taillon, he's pitched relatively well. I think at a minimum, that guy's getting you through 5-6 innings on a consistent basis, which if you're a Cleveland team that has really, really, really abused your bullpen, there's a lot of value in that. Taillon has some club control, not a free agent, I believe, until 2027. This is a deal from my perspective that makes a ton of sense for a Cleveland team that's trying to hedge a little bit, where they're like, hey, like realistically, we know we can't beat Baltimore or New York or probably even Seattle in a playoff series, but we want to make it look to our fans like we're not totally not giving a shit about this season. And Taillon, maybe he pitches a little bit better. Maybe we can tweak a thing or two, make him a little bit better. Taillon is a guy that makes a lot of sense because you get him for this year. You have another year of club control, sells it to the fan base that we're trying to do something. It's definitely not a Tariq Skubal. It's not a big fish. But I think it makes a lot of sense. And if you're the Cubs, it makes a lot of sense to get off of him because you're 6 games under 500. You're going nowhere. And he's a mediocre pitcher. So if you can get something for him of substance, why not? Why not try to get some younger talent back and replenish the farm system a little bit? That's my thoughts on him.
I have a question. If you had to take one of the two, would you rather have Zach Eflin or Jameson Taillon for the rest of the year? This year.
In what organization?
You can pick. Cleveland.
If I'm Cleveland and I can get Zach Eflin, I'd rather have Zach Eflin.
Interesting. Okay. I was just curious because that's another name that I've heard about. That's a bigger starting pitching name that I know that the Rays just got and whatnot. Yeah. But if the Rays become a seller, depending on whatnot, I know that he's not going to come cheap, obviously, but $22 million through this year and next year isn't terrible. So
yeah, but I mean, it's a good point. It's a contract the Rays would certainly love to get off of. That was
that's my point. Yeah, is this is like what the Rays do. So and again, that's where this can be so fun to play around with which teams are going to do and what's available. Because I mean, what if the Rays are pairing Eflin and Fairbanks, or if they say, Harry, if you want a Rosarina, we need you to take Eflin so we can get this money off the books, or whatever it is.
I mean, Cleveland, and you compare. I know you got Quan in left field, so you'd have to. Like, I don't know if Randy makes a ton of sense. Maybe that deal doesn't make sense for Cleveland, and maybe Taillon does make more sense just a standalone pitcher. But if you can add some starting pitching and you can add an impact outfield bat, that's something to consider. Like I right and left field are very different positions, but if you're primarily looking for a little bit of a spark offensively, it's not right field in Cleveland is not a terribly difficult position to play. We've put far less athletic people in right field in Cleveland and just said good freaking luck out there. Randy at least has some offensive upside. You know he's got the postseason pedigree, which you mentioned earlier. If you could get Eflin and Randy Arozarena, I think the concern is Tampa would try to get somebody very, very high on your prospect list in a deal like that. And I don't know if that is something Cleveland would be comfortable with for a team that, like we talked about, really doesn't stand up to any of the other competitors in the American League realistically. I think a guy like Taillon makes a lot more sense for the Guardians.
Yeah, I can see that. I was just kind of curious because those are names being floated around and whatnot. But
I think the Dodgers should go get Zach Eflin and Randy Arozarena. I think that would make a lot of sense. You go get a proven middle of the rotation guy. If you're by Dodger standards, it was Zach Eflin. You go get another left fielder / impact outfielder. The Dodgers could use another one of those, Randy Arozarena. I think Randy's one of those guys too. Like you saw how he played in the WBC. Like you put him on the big stage. I think that's the guy you could get excited about playing baseball. You send him up the way.
Randy Arozarena is like Nate Eovaldi. That's just the guy you don't want to see in October if you don't have to. He's like one of the last people you want to see, and that's what makes Tampa Bay and for me, Tampa Bay, Texas, two of the more intriguing teams. Do they sell? What do they do? Especially so, you want to go through a couple other guys as far as like what do you see with Jack Flaherty and stuff? Are you at a point where you trust Jack now, considering it's been this deep into the season? Are you still a little bit iffy on Jack Flaherty?
I love Jack. I traded for Jack Flaherty in my fantasy league. So if that tells you anything, I like Jack Flaherty. The biggest concern for me, if I'm a front office, you're trading for Jack Flaherty almost for sure just for the rest of this season. I'm unrestricted free agent. So unless you have some sort of backdoor agreement with him on an extension or coming back, you're trading for a rental. I think you also have to be mindful of the fact that he's been publicly admitted that he's been pitching through some back discomfort / pain all year. If you trade for a rental and that guy has an issue, then you just gave away a significant piece. You're not getting Jack Flaherty for cheap. You're giving away a significant piece for Jack Flaherty. And is he 100% healthy? From a pure talent perspective, I would love to have Jack Flaherty relative to a guy like Taillon. But I think if you're a team like Cleveland, I think if you're one of these teams that's like fringe, we should do something. We shouldn't just stay completely neutral. I think a Taillon makes more sense because Taillon's going to be serviceable. He's probably going to be there, and you get the longer club control. But I like Flaherty. I think Kikuchi's another name that is probably going to spark a lot of interest. Hopefully Toronto doesn't hold him hostage, but he's a free agent after this year.
Yeah,
Kikuchi, flaws for sure, but especially if Tariq Skubal doesn't move in this market, and honestly, Garrett Crochet with this list of demands, I don't know if it's a given that he's going to move for a big price
Agreed.
tag.
And Kikuchi's one of those guys that can be erratic, but if he finds it and he's in a zone, that could be deadly come October. I mean, I think a lot of people forget that. Like some of these guys, we saw it with Arizona and their pitching staff and their bullpen. Sometimes you just get in a zone and it doesn't matter what has happened in previous. I mean, Kikuchi could get traded. It could be, there's a lot of possibilities out there.
And he comes from the left side. That's a different look.
Exactly.
Has multiple lefties that they can go to, and there's certain offenses, you know this from betting, there's certain offenses that just really, really can't hit left-handed pitching. And if you can go get a guy like Kikuchi to go throw for one game in a 3 or 5 game series, that could be a really pivotal swing game in a series. So I think Kikuchi's a name to pay attention to. I don't know, again, what Toronto's plans are. Toronto just seems they just seem a little butthurt, to be honest. I'm sorry if I'm offending any Toronto fans, but they just seem a little butthurt. They didn't get Ohtani. Their season has been very underwhelming. They still haven't had any playoff success with Vlad, Bo, any of these guys. I wonder what they're going to do. But I think Kikuchi and Yimi Garcia could be interesting. Those are two guys that should be moved 100% in my mind, and teams could definitely use the services of both of them. Be interesting for me to see where they go. But I think the biggest names to follow, I think like the market movers, I think Tariq Skubal stays pat in Detroit. I think you're going to see a lot more people looking at Garrett Crochet, but now he's got this list of demands. A guy who's already surpassed his career high for innings in a single season. How many teams are really going to take a chance on him to pitch in October? I think it's going to be interesting. I think like the Kikuchis of this market could be very valuable. I think you could see a really nice return on him. Jameson Taillon, Eric Fetty is a low cost guy that if you're the 27 and 78 Chicago White Sox, why would you hold on to him?
I know this is going to sound gross, but Tyler Anderson's sitting with a 2.91 ERA. He's just sitting out there. Another lefty that's a veteran presence that, again, not a guy that you're rushing to have on your team. But if you can send him out there and he even pitches somewhat like he has, I mean, it wouldn't be terrible to bring him on your team. And another guy that up and down in a definite down spot right now is Cal Quantrill, who has an amazing splitter that's been sitting there up there in Colorado. Maybe he gets to a more of a pitcher-friendly park or something like that, and really starts to pitch well. So, yeah, there's a lot of guys out there. I think that the bats are are more interesting to me as well. The bats and some of those relievers, because the starters is kind of it's like, do you really, if somebody's going to make a move, it's going to be a big one. You know what I mean? And we're going to be like, oh, okay, they're going for it, I think. But there's a lot of guys like outfielders and DH guys like Brent Rooker, that's obviously we've talked about. And if you watch baseball, he's one of the hotter hitters right now in baseball. Jesse Winker would be a cheap rental that's with a 132 WRC plus. Taylor Ward, a guy I really love him. Analytically sound, would have club controls till 2026. Lane Thomas, another guy that can hit left-handed pitching, control through 2025. Tommy Pham, another guy that, dude, I mean, it's hard to hate on Tommy Pham. I mean, even in Chicago, he's been playing really, really well. So, those are the guys.
I can hate on Tommy Pham. He cost me money one day. Routine fly ball that would have ended the game. I bet on the White Sox, and it was a game that they actually should have won. But I get your point. I
feel it. I'm really like, there's guys. Jake Berger is one guy that I mentioned earlier in the show. And the other guy that I really want to see what happens with is Luis Renfrigo, because he is one of these guys that you could put him at the top of your lineup. You could put him at the bottom of your lineup. I think he could play a couple different positions defensively as well. And Renfrigo is really, really good at the plate and doesn't strike out a lot, hits for contact really, really well. A guy that you could really, really be versatile in October come wise. And if he could play first base, I mean, that's a name that if Houston were to do something like that, and I know that Renfrigo hasn't played a lot of first base, if any, but man, I mean, that would be having him at the 9 hole and then Altuve right behind him, that's kind of a scary thought if you ask me. So there's a lot of guys out there that aren't really going to be talked a lot about, that aren't the Luis Roberts or Jazz Chisholms or whatever, but even a Cody Bellinger. I mean, you never really know. But
they're guys that will make an impact. They're guys that,
yes,
if you're a casual-ish baseball fan and you don't watch all 30 teams, when your team trades for Brent Rooker, you're like, who's Brent Rooker? Right?
Be excited.
You should be, right? Those are the guys who a lot of times move the needle in the postseason. It's a guy who, Brent Rooker, can hit 4 home runs in a 7-game series.
Yeah, I know. What if somebody comes and pries Brandon Lau away from Tampa Bay and he's had over a 900 OPS this month? A fantastic day today. I don't know if he hit a home run or a double, but I know it was like whatever. Another fantastic day today that can hit for power as well. You put him in the middle of a lineup as well. Again, there's a lot of situations that's going on, but those are some of the names that I'm really, really paying attention to as well. There's some more relievers on the market as well that we haven't really touched on. Obviously, Tanner Scott being the most, I think the most important. But again, we go back to Toronto, Chad Green and Yimi Garcia, both of these guys. Yimi Garcia, electric stuff. Chad Green, a veteran that I trust as well. Carlos Estevez, again, another Angel who former All-Star, doesn't walk a lot of guys. Michael Kopech, who can be erratic, electric, untrustworthy at times, but filthy stuff. So yeah, there's a lot of questions and a lot of guys out there that could be left that might not be traded at all. But yeah, again, the Rangers and Tampa Bay are the two teams that I think everybody needs to watch, because they have some pieces that I could see them selling and really changing other teams. And I could also see a team like the Rangers maybe trying to sneakily try to end up buying. I don't know, but it's sure going to be really fun.
Maybe Texas buys from Tampa. That would throw a wrench into things.
That would definitely throw a wrench into some things for sure. So, but yeah, I mean, that's kind of it as far as the trade rumors are concerned and the possibilities. A lot of what is going to happen, I think, depends on the next week or so. I mean, the Padres are a team that we haven't touched on either that is more than willing to go make some moves. They want a pitcher. They want more pitching to upgrade their bullpen and their starters. So I think that they think that they're going to be okay as far as hitting wise. I mean, they're number one. I think they're number one in batting average in Major League Baseball right now.
And they're matching lefties, which has been a sore spot for them in recent years.
It has been a sore spot. They have seen a lot of them in a row. I think they've seen 3 or 4 lefties in a row with Hertz, Corbin, and somebody else. I can't remember. Mitchell Parker. Hey, Mrs.
And Corbin. Parker. Actually, they saw Corbin too. So
yeah, they just saw Corbin today. They didn't even, matter of fact, they didn't even hit well against Corbin. Corbin loaded the bases in the bottom of the first. They went to a rain delay, and then he got Cronenworth to strike out, and then Ha-Seong Kim hit a ball that James Wood probably should have got, but he didn't, and 3 scored or something like that, because I think there was 2 outs, and everybody was running, but yeah, or something like that. But yeah, Padres they weren't great. They only won 3-0, but
they didn't need a whole lot today.
Dylan Cease, throwing no-nos.
Congrats to Dylan Cease, man. He's a fun guy to watch. He's a competitor. I like him a lot.
It was almost CJ Abrams had the best hit ball, or the only ball with over a 500 expected batting or whatever, 50-50 ball. That was the last play of the game. But yeah, it would have been so fitting that if CJ Abrams was the one to break it up.
Well, especially because he's had a near no.
Yeah, and Luis Ariz is the one that broke it up before that. So now obviously he's his teammate. So a couple really good defensive plays as well for the Padres. That's the one thing with the Padres that's nice, is that they have been playing really, really good defense. So
is that your feel good story of the week? Dylan Cease tossing a no, second one in Padres history.
Yeah, I guess I could use that. That was pretty cool. Second one in Padres history. I've watched them both. Joe Musgrove and now Dylan Cease. Happened to be watching both games on TV, so that's kind of cool. So do you have a feel-good story of the week?
Yeah, my feel-good is shout out to my guy Dom Lowe. He's a young kid who's in our program. He went to the Guardians game recently and caught a home run. And
that's dope.
Yeah, so it's representing the program good, but he's a little stud. Has a bright future in baseball. But like, what a cool experience, man. I've been close to catching home run balls. I've obviously caught a lot in batting practice and things like that when I was a kid and used to go down there early, but I've never been able to catch a baseball in a game. And his mom texted me, he's like, yeah, he just backhanded that shit. And
never any ball or just a home run ball?
I've caught foul balls. I've never caught a home run ball.
I was gonna say, if you never caught a foul ball, that sucks. That's crazy.
The first foul ball I actually ever caught, I can take no credit in this. I was at it was a minor league stadium. I was in line to buy nachos. There's a foul ball hit over where the pop stand is, or like the concession stand is. The ball bounces, lands in the nachos, like up by the register. And I'm like, this is mine. This is mine now.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think catching them is fun. And also, like, when it's the end of an inning, my son's caught 2, like one Alec Boehm threw to him and one JP Crawford threw. But when they throw the ball up after the inning, it's like comes out of the dugout, like the first baseman will catch it and throw the other one. Like those are like the good ones too, because like those kids are like, oh, he threw it to me. And I'm like, oh hell yeah, he did. Hell yeah, he did.
Okay, so this is my last story, and then I want to know I want to know other people's craziest near catch story or catch story, like cool story. You catch a baseball at a game, or you almost caught a baseball. The craziest almost got a baseball at a game for me was I was late high school, maybe early college at this point. Yuli Gurriel, who debuted with the Astros, hits his first, so he's up at the plate. We're sitting down by where the ball boy sits down the left field line. Yuli Gurriel hits a home run off the left field wall, just above the yellow line, and Cleveland's got the rails up there where the drink rails are. The ball hits off the drink rails and it caroms back into the field. So the ball boy ends up with this baseball. Me, being who I am and doing what I do, I knew that was Yuli Gurriel's first career home run. So I'm usually not that big of a, oh, let me go rush and try to get this baseball type of guy. But in that situation, that was the Houston team. They won a World Series. They had Verlander, Altuve, Bregman, Correa, all these dudes on the team. And I'm like, oh, man, if I get this first home run for Yuli Gurriel, I can parlay this into something nice, like some on-field passes, maybe some signed memorabilia from potential Hall of Famers. So I scoot a little bit, to get over to the fence. I'm like, dude, please give me this baseball, right? Little kid comes running from the section over. He comes running down the steps in Cleveland. It's a long step in the corner of the seats there. So he comes on a dead sprint, and I had my arms up. This kid runs straight into my elbow, face first into my elbow. And you just hear the whole section go, oh! So it's safe to say I did not get the baseball. This little kid who ran into my elbow got the baseball. The representative from the Astros comes over and is like, hey, we'll give you a bat for the ball. And it's like, sounds great. No negotiation, nothing. It broke my heart. There was no holding out. There was no anything. That kid could have had something really cool, and he didn't. And
oh yeah, if I get a 100th home run ball or first home run or something, I'm getting passes. I don't want no bats. I don't want no gloves.
Yeah, you want the experience, right? That in my mind, that's what I wanted. I wanted the next day, invite me back the next day. I want to be on the field, BP. I want to be able to
I was going to say, because I was just about to say that, because I know, because I buy them for me and my kids, you can buy tickets to go get on the field for batting practice. Yep. The Padres, it's $300 and you get a stadium tour, and then you get an hour and a half on the field at batting practice.
Yep.
Just give me a couple of those. I don't even care. Give me an autograph. I don't care about the autograph. Just give me the tickets. Give me them tickets.
It's the experience, just being on the field. So that's my craziest. Almost got a baseball. Almost got a milestone baseball. Let us know yours. I love those stories. Everybody's got something, right? Everybody's got the
if you go to baseball games on a regular basis or once or twice a year or something, usually, I mean, at least for me, I don't ball hawk by myself with my kids. I like to help my kids and stuff, but it's really hard. It's really hard, especially if you have a kid that's like a 12-year-old or anything like that you can go out there and batting practice, find balls. Or my kid personally likes to hang out with the bullpen guys. He's always in there during the game talking with the bullpen guys, getting balls with them and stuff like that. So it can be cool, and sometimes those things can be worth money. Not big money, but we like to collect the collectible ones, because every once in a while they do collectible balls. For instance, this year the Padres, it's 20th anniversary at Petco, so every once in a while they use commemorative balls and stuff.
Yeah.
So it's nice little things to keep collections on and whatnot. But we're at an hour and 15 now. We've rambled enough.
Well, thank you for indulging.
Coverage is back though, right? We're back and better than ever.
Back. And I have no more national tournaments on the docket this year, so we're back to regularly.
Because we lost, right?
Well, it's the end of our season.
I'm just messing with you.
Justin's got to get his jabs in because his Padres are 7.5 games out of first place. But
7.5, but we play in the National League. It's all good. And to be dead honest, after we lost that first game out of the All-Star break, 7-0, I was doom and gloom. It was over. The season is over. But we've rattled them off. Tomorrow's a big one, though. Tomorrow's a big one. Off the no-hitter, we go to Baltimore, who's been shaky, to say the least, themselves. And we face Grayson Rodriguez with a guy in Adam Mazur, who should not be in major leagues right now. But
God, no.
Baltimore isn't hitting anybody with a right hand. So it'll be interesting to see them coming home from their first road trip from the All-Star break as well. So not the best spot for Baltimore. Screw them Birds. Let's go, Friars.
Well, good luck to your team, Toast.
You too. Cleveland's going to need it.
Hey, I'm less of a Cleveland fan than you are a Padres fan, so I can stomach Cleveland.
Boys, it's a rough life. It's not fun. Look at me. Look at how stupid I look. So, anyway.
Yep. Thank you, everybody. We'll be back to our regularly scheduled schedule at this point. The All-Star break, I was out of town, but we'll get back to it. We appreciate everyone's support. We want you guys to know we appreciate you. Again, let us know you're crazy, almost got a ball / you got lucky and got a ball at a game. Let us know. We'll share some of them next week when we get on here and do the next show.
Yeah. I can't really say anything else to that. So good night. Have a good night, guys.
Everyone, appreciate you.